For this lesson, I'm going to show you how to perform an inspection on an air conditioning system. Now, we have already started the operation of the air conditioning system by going to the thermostat, switching it over to AC, and then lowering the temperature. As we walk toward the air conditioning system, we want to look at the overall condition. Is it rusty? Is it level? Is there any vegetation around the system that would impede any airflow? So one of the things that I use, I have a small torpedo level, and I place it on top. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want to make sure if the system is not level, you may be able to hear some wear or some rubbing with the fan itself. Also, if it is unlevel, that will definitely shorten the life of the fan system also. All right, and you're going to want it to do both ways. Now, when it comes to operation, what we're going to be doing is two things. One, we're going to be placing our hand over the top of it. There is going to be warm air coming out of the top of the fan because we're going to be having cool air going through the ductwork into the registers. So we're going to feel it along here. This is definitely warm. And then the next step we need to do is when you look at the insulation line, this is where the refrigerant actually flows, you're going to take your finger and feel right against the coolant piping, and it should feel almost like a beer can temperature itself. Now, it is critical that this line is completely insulated, not deteriorated, because if it is, that cool refrigerant, you're going to have inefficiencies with the overall system itself. In addition to that, we're going to look at the electrical connection coming up to make sure it is sound, that this has been actually tie wrapped together. And then you're going to look at the switch. So we're going to actually lift this up to the best I can. We're going to look at the overall condition, and you got to remember that when you do this, sometimes you got to be careful of bees and insects that can be inside of here. Now, this shutoff should be within 5 feet of the system itself, and the reason why it's here is because when you have a service technician coming in, he's not going to be able to go inside the home because maybe no one's home, so they can actually turn the system off and then perform the work that they need to do. So once you actually perform this operation here, the next step is we're going to go downstairs in the basement, look at the furnace system so we can look at the A-coil. So now we're in the basement, and what's next? One of the first things that you're going to do is look at the refrigerant line. Why are we going to look at the refrigerant line? Is because if there are any leaks in this refrigerant line, it's going to start frosting. It's almost going to look like ice is going to be forming on the outside of it, and you're going to actually be able to see that. And that means there is a small pinhole leak in the line, which Freon is coming out, and then it's forming ice at that location. So we're going to be looking at where it enters the home and then following it all the way to our furnace. Now, looking at the furnace, inside of here is what is called the A-coil. We're going to be using the same fan as the furnace does so all the original ductwork that's getting pulled, the air from inside the home is going to be passing through the filter, being pulled through the fan, and now that air is going to be reconditioned. We're going to take that warm air inside our home, recondition it, and it's going to get cooler. And what happens is we're taking the moisture out. So we have a condensate drain that's going to come to our pump down here, and then there's a level switch, and then this is going to pump it through the Tygon tubing all the way to our plumbing system. So we got to remember is that we are conditioning that air to make sure it's cool. Now, how do we know this is working? What we end up doing is when we're performing our general inspection, we're going to go to all the registers and we're going to feel it with our hand. And if there's cool air coming at the register, that means it's operating. Did you want to use a temperature infrared to measure the temperature of the register and against the wall? You can, but you're going to get some really different levels, or different temperatures, and that might throw people off. Because you got to remember, those delta temperatures are going to be different if the registers are close to the system and it's far away. So we just say, go to your register, feel it with your hand, and if you're feeling cool air, that means it's working. Let's take a step back for a moment. When it comes to operation of the air conditioning system, we want to make sure that the temperature has not been below 65 degrees within the last 24 hours. What does that mean? We can end up damaging the system. The refrigerant will go to the coolest spot within the line itself. So it's almost like starting your car engine without any oil. Think about that. What type of damage would it cause? It's very similar. It's starting the system when all the refrigerant is in one particular location. Now, if it does happen, you could damage the system or shorten the overall life of the system itself. Also, let's consider heat pumps. Heat pumps and air conditioning systems can be one system altogether, all right? So the major difference between the system, we're still gonna have our condenser and compressor outside. We're still gonna have our A coil on the inside, but that system will have what is called a reversing valve. Meaning, when it's the summertime, we're gonna actually produce cold air. As air passes through the fan in the furnace, it's gonna come up to your A coil, as I said before, and it's gonna make the air cold, which then will go to the rooms. When we switch it over on our thermostat to heat, that reversing valve will change the direction of the refrigerant, and now as that air passes through the system up to your A coil, you're actually heating the air. And when that happens, it's going to go through the ductwork into each of the rooms. And again, when we do the general inspection, we're going to take our hand and we're going to actually feel that warm air. So as you remember, when we were outside making sure the system was operating appropriately for the air conditioning system, remember how I had my hand on top of the system trying to feel that warm air? Now, if the heat pump was turned on, we should be feeling cool air at that location and warm air here. So the thing you got to remember is it's still all one system itself. Like I said, the compressor and condenser outside, you got the refrigerant lines, and then you have your A coil. And that system can produce cold air for the summertime and warm air for the wintertime. And that's how you perform an air conditioning and a heat pump inspection.